7 and Year 8, thank you so much for deciding to give this video a whirl and give it a watch. As I explained in the email, or I will do when I write it, that I just thought that this was kind of a nice way for us to try and restore a little bit of normality. Obviously in lesson, you know, in a normal week you're used to seeing me every day and hearing me every day, and it's been, you know, like 5 weeks now since you have, so I'm just hoping that communicating with you this way is gonna feel a little bit more normal, a little bit more like what we're used to. I know we've been in touch via email, but it's not the same, and I just kind of miss reading to you guys. So the point of these videos then will be to read chapters from books that I think are really good, and just kind of chapters from books that I think you guys should hear. But predominantly and probably mainly, especially to start with, I'm going to read chapters from Stephen Fry's book to you for kind of 2 reasons really. First of all being it's fantastic, like so incredibly interesting, and secondly because we've been studying the Odyssey in lesson, and we've actually already read some of this book together in lesson, and I had planned for us to read more. Obviously that, you know, that's not quite gone to plan, so I thought, well, why not do it this way, because it, you know, it's good, it's a really good book, and it's just really important as well for you to kind of hear good stuff being read aloud, and you know, that's what our lessons were often like. They were kind of hinged on, you know, me reading to you and then us discussing it and sharing our ideas together, and I've really missed that. So you know, this is just as much for me as it is for you guys, and I really hope that you guys get on board and find it interesting, and you know, can just think it's a good way of spending kind of 10 to 15 minutes. I'll probably try and do at least 1 video a week, maybe sometimes a couple, depending on what's going on, and I'll kind of tend to pick the chapters or pick the things that I'm going to read to you, but you know, I am as ever open to like suggestions or like requests, maybe when we get a little bit further down the line, of anything specific that any of you really want to know about, or anything that you any books that you've heard about that you would like me to do a reading from. I'm happy to kind of play it by ear though, you know, we'll see how this works, see if we like it, see if we can kind of get on board with it, and just see what happens. There are no rules really at the minute. So the reason why I'm going to start with a chapter from Stephen Fry's book, which you can buy on Amazon for about £6, and I recommend that if you're interested in Greek mythology, which I know so many of you are, it's a really good retelling of kind of how it all came to be, and all of the Greek myths. And you know, we spoke about, before we started to read the Odyssey, we did quite a lot of work about kind of understanding you know, the beginning of things, about chaos, and we also learned about Cronus and Uranus and kind of how that all unravelled. We also learned about the war between the Titans and the Olympians, which we know that inevitably Zeus won and kind of enabled like the rest of things to kind of fall into order, so for us to kind of end up with the 12 Olympians and Zeus as the, you know, the king of the gods sat on the throne on Mount Olympus. But we didn't really talk too much about like the war itself, the war between the Titans and the Olympians. And in this chapter, Clash of the Titans, it's not a very long one, but Stephen Fry just kind of give us a little bit more information. So I thought some of you might be quite interested in it. So before we kind of start reading then, I think, you know, let's just kind of acknowledge and talk about just again how powerful knowledge about Greek mythology is, and how kind of cool it is to be able to kind of piece things together. I think that's how I like to think about it. Like after reading after reading this book and, you know, doing other research and kind of other things I've known and I've studied about Greek mythology, I think other things just start to like click into place, and you know, you will recognise so much of kind of, you know, other literature and other stories and kind of references in songs and film and kind of other elements of culture and words as well, kind of how so much of it links back to Greek mythology. So you know, when before we started the Odyssey, we talked about kind of this as our reasoning why, because we just think it's so powerful. It's such powerful knowledge for you guys to have, and it makes you sound really clever if you can talk about Greek mythology and say, oh well, I know where that word came from, or you know, it came from this Greek myth, or it came from this Greek god, or this mythological creature. So, you know, there's my little kind of justification. Not that anyone was asking for it, but I just think it, you know, it's worth kind of reminding ourselves why we are investing time into this. It's really interesting, really, is the main reason. So, Clash of the Titans, and so we know that kind of the war between the Titans and the Olympians came about because Zeus went to find revenge. He wanted to get revenge on Cronus for swallowing his brothers and sisters. You know, when they were born, when Rhea gave birth, you know, we talked about the fact that Cronus just kind of devoured them because he was so terrified of the curse that his father put on him, that he was going to, you know, be defeated, be dethroned by one of his children. So to try and stop that from happening, he ate them, and, you know, which was upsetting for Rhea, understandably. So she, the last one, Zeus, she sent him off, waited for him to kind of grow up to a young man, and then asked him to help her to kind of get rid of Cronus, which we know is what he did, and he was successful in that. So, Clash of the Titans then. Let's have a read. I will just say I'm not a YouTuber. I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm not sure how to edit videos. This is going to be a one take thing, so there might be some stumbling and mumbling, but that's just how it would be in lesson anyway. We don't have take twos, so bear with me and forgive me if it's a bit of a shambles, this first one, but hopefully I'll get better. I'm really looking forward to reading to you guys anyway. Okay, so at the summit of Mount Othrys, Cronus lay stretched out on the ground. The other Titans had not yet learned of Zeus's rescue of his brothers and sisters, but it seemed likely that when they did, they would react with furious violence. Under cover of the night, Rhea and her 6 children slipped away, putting a greater distance between them and Titan country as they could. War, Zeus understood clearly, was inevitable. Cronus would not rest as long as his children lived, and Zeus was just as determined to dethrone his father. He heard, louder than ever, the sound he had heard within him since infancy, a softly insistent whisper from Morose telling him that it was his destiny to rule. The bloody, violent and destructive conflict that followed is known to historians as the Titanomachy. While most of the details of this 10-year war may be lost to us, we do know that the heat and the fury, the explosive power and colossal energy released by the battling titans, gods and monsters caused mountains to bellow fire and the ground itself to quake and crack. Many islands and land masses were formed by these battles. Whole continents shifted and reshaped themselves, and much of the world as we know it now owes its geography to these seismic disturbances, to this literally earth-shattering conflict. In a straight fight, it is almost certain that the combined strength of the Titans would have been too much for their young opponents, the Olympians. They were stronger and more remorselessly savage. All but Clymene's sons Prometheus and Epimetheus sided with Cronus, far outnumbering the small group of self-styled gods ranged against them under Zeus's generalship. But just as Uranos had paid dearly for his crime of imprisoning the Cyclopses and Hecatoncheires inside Gaia, so Cronus was about to pay for the blunder of imprisoning them in the caverns of Tartarus. It was the wise and clever Metis who advised Zeus to go down and release his 3 one-eyed and 300-handed brothers. He offered them freedom if they would help him defeat Cronus and the Titans. They needed no further encouragement. The Gigantes too chose to side with Zeus and prove themselves brave and tireless fighters. In the final decisive battle, the pitiless ferocity of the Hecatoncheires, not to mention their surplus of heads and hands, combined quite marvellously with the wild electric power of the Cyclopses, whose names were, if you recall, Brightness, Lightning and Thunder, Arges, Steropes and Brontes. These gifted craftsmen hammered their mastery of storms into thunderbolts for Zeus to use as weapons, which he learned to fling with pinpoint accuracy at his enemies, blasting them to atoms. Under his direction, the Hecatoncheires picked up and hurled rocks at furious speed, while the Cyclopses harried and dazzled the enemy with lightning shows and terrifying peals of thunder. The 100 hands of the Hecatoncheires scooped and launched, and innumerable rocks at the enemy like so many demented windmilling catapults until, bludgeoned and battered, the Titans called for ceasefire. The 100 hands of the Hecatoncheires scooped and launched innumerable rocks at the enemy like so many demented windmilling catapults until, bludgeoned and battered, the Titans called for ceasefire. We will leave them, their great bloodied heads bowed in full and final surrender, and take a moment to look at what else had been going on in the world while battle raged for those 10 terrible years. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that chapter. I hope it kind of gave you an extra little snippet of information about that war between the Titans and Zeus and his brothers and sisters. Like I said, if there's anything that is kind of, has piqued your interest or anything that you want to know a little bit more about, you can drop me an email, or you can do some Googling, do some research for yourself. I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed reading aloud again. A little bit rusty here and there, but I hope you guys enjoyed it as well, and that you're happy for me to continue making these videos for you guys. Huge well done for watching. Huge well done for all of the work that you're doing and sending in. I've been absolutely overwhelmed by the amount of you that are working so hard, but also the work itself. It's been an absolute, as always, but it's been an absolute pleasure to read your work. So I look forward to the next video, and I look forward to hearing your thoughts about it, and also to reading the work that you send in for me at the end of this week. Thank you very much.